Hi and welcome to Shorts in Psychology. In this video, we're going to have a quick look at obedience. What is obedience and how is it different to conformity? We will also look at some of the different factors that influence obedience. Obedience is a form of social influence where a person follows a command by an authority figure. This could be an individual with authority such as a parent, teacher or politician, or it could be the rules or laws given by society. Obedience differs to conformity in a few key ways. Firstly, obedience involves an order, whereas conformity involves a request. Obedience also involves a hierarchy of power. The command is being issued by someone of higher status and doesn't involve imitation. It is assumed that without the order, the person would not have acted in this way. Conformity, on the other hand, does involve imitation, as the individual is going along with someone of equal status like a peer. Lastly, obedience relies on social power. The obeying person has to accept that it is legitimate for the command to be made of them, whereas in conformity, the person is imitating their peer due to the need to be socially accepted. Real-life examples of obedience include the Holocaust. Millions of people were killed in Nazi Germany in concentration camps, but Hitler nor a handful of generals could have killed them all. What made all of those many Nazi soldiers and officials follow the orders they were given? One contributing factor is obedience to authority. Let's now look at some factors that influence obedience. Proximity refers to how close or immediate the authority figure is. In Milgram's experiments, obedience was higher when the authority figure, the experimenter, was sitting at a desk in the room with the participant. Obedience was then significantly reduced when the authority figure was absent from the room and relaying directions by telephone. We also see this frequently in everyday life. Think about what happens to a class working quietly when the teacher leaves the room. Inevitably, some students will stop working and start talking or becoming distracted. Similarly, whilst driving on a freeway, you will notice that many cars will drive more slowly and carefully if a police car is in the vicinity, and then resume speeding or tailgating once the police car is out of sight. The proximity of the victim also influences obedience. Immediacy may make it easier to view the victim as a living and breathing person like oneself, and thus to empathise with his or her thoughts and feelings. As a result, as immediacy increases, obedience decreases. This explains why pregnant women often express greater commitment to their pregnancy after having seen an ultrasound picture that clearly reveals body parts, and thus why some anti-abortion supporters advocate for pregnant women wishing to have an abortion to be forced to view the fetus on an ultrasound first. Another important factor is the prestige or legitimacy of the authority figure, which allows people to abdicate personal responsibility for their actions. Most societies are hierarchical where people such as parents, teachers and police hold authority over us. The authority they use is considered legitimate as it helps society to run smoothly, and thus people tend to obey. Therefore, when authority such as this is recognised as morally right or legally based, people tend to obey them. Milgram's original experiments were conducted by lab-coated scientists at prestigious Yale University, and the purpose of the research would quite clearly be the pursuit of scientific knowledge. When these elements of legitimate authority were removed, obedience decreased. One of the most dramatic influences on obedience is group pressure or peer support. In Milgram's obedience experiments, the presence of two obedient peers raised complete obedience to 92.5%. In contrast, two disobedient peers who refused to continue after giving shocks in the 150 to 210 range reduced complete obedience to 10%. Group pressure probably has its effects because the actions of others help to confirm that it is either legitimate or illegitimate to obey the authority figure. A norm is a standard of action that specifies what behaviour is expected or normal and what behaviour is abnormal. De-individuation is a state where you become so immersed in the norms of the group that you lose your sense of identity and personal responsibility. An individual relinquishes individual responsibility for actions and sees behaviour as a consequence of group norms and expectations. Anonymity leads to loss of internal restraints, self-identity, and responsibility for our behaviour. Thus, de-individuation is associated with higher levels of obedience. Let's finish by consolidating our learning with an exam standard question. Pause the video while you read and attempt this question. Before we answer this question, let's start by looking at the lead-in verb. You have been asked to explain the outcome of the experiment. This means that you need to give reasons for your answer. Hopefully, even if you have struggled with the explanation aspect, you were able to identify what the outcome of the experiment would be. Based on what we know about factors influencing obedience, a greater number of participants in Condition 1 would complete the questionnaire compared to Condition 2. This is due to group pressure. In Condition 1, the participants have been placed with obedient peers, increasing the likelihood that they will complete the embarrassing and personal questionnaire. However, in Condition 2, they have been placed with disobedient peers who have refused and been asked to leave. As a result, the participants are less likely to obey the researcher's request to complete the questionnaire. I hope you now have a better understanding of obedience and how some different factors influence it. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time for another Shorts in Psychology.